Securities offered through Kestra Investment Services, LLC, Kestra IS, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Kestra Advisory Services, LLC, Kestra AS, an affiliate of Kestra IS. Capital Advisory Group, Inc. is not affiliated with Kestra IS or Kestra AS. Neither Kestra IS nor Kestra AS provide legal or tax advice and are not certified public accounting firms.
You work hard for your money. For the next hour, you're going to learn how to keep what's yours. Capital Advisory Group presents Keep What's Yours. Here is Josh Gilbert and Jeff Zufall.
Hello and welcome to Keep What's Yours with Jeff Zufall. I'm Josh Gilbert, sitting here with Jeff Zufall, Senior Tax Strategist and Wealth Advisor with Capital Advisory Group. Hello, Jeff.
Hi, happy Saturday. How you doing?
Happy holidays.
That's right. It's almost
we're
here.
Almost done with this year.
Really close.
And you know what that means? We have to start looking at our taxes.
That's right. You got to start putting your stuff together for 2022.
But it's not too late. If
Never.
you still have a paycheck coming to
right.
you can
Probably
still make an adjustment.
Maybe one or two more paychecks coming to you, and that's it. So
yeah. So we can talk about that. We can also talk about the crypto stuff that's going on. A lot of things nationally happening with interest rate hikes and all that stuff. But I will mention Jeff Zufall is a senior tax strategist and wealth advisor with Capital Advisory Group. He is, full disclosure, my tax guy.
yes.
So whenever I have any questions, I give Jeff a call or I just wait until the weekend and ask him on the show.
That's right.
So he is there for me. He's there for you. 636-394-5524. And you can check him out at CapitalAdvisoryGrp.com. There is something called the EIDL loan repayment.
Yes.
And this is something that came about during the pandemic.
Yes, these were pandemic, and so there's PPP, which was the Paycheck Protection Program that started, and then these were emergency disaster loans on top of that. So originally the EDILs, when they came out, they said that everybody was going to get $10,000 out of the box. And then it was an actual loan with the Small Business Administration or the SBA. I think within a couple of weeks, the feds realized that the $10,000 up front was never going to happen. So these became actual loans. It's a loan with the SBA. And the funny part is it basically started from a standpoint where I think they said there was $390 billion in disaster loans issued. There wasn't much from the application process other than to say, hey, I have a business and I need money. It was short, sweet, and simple, and poof, within a couple of weeks there was money in your bank account. The problem is it's a real live loan. There's very, very few of them that have actually been forgiven, and it's kind of a weird scenario to get it forgiven. But there's the 3.75 is the small business loan amount. That's the interest rate that you will pay on this. They're typically 30-year notes. So people were like, hey, I'll take advantage of it and borrow $20,000, $30,000. I'll pay it over 30 years. It's 3.75. If it is paid through the business, the interest that you pay is business deductible as interest of doing business. And they used it as they went forward. And if you're a non-for-profit, it was 2.75, so you get a little advantage by being a nonprofit. But again, the concept is in today's environment, it's a payback loan going forward, where the majority of the PPP loans were forgiven, which means you've got the money, and kind of down the path of there's a lot of stuff saying, hey, student loan forgiveness, and everybody's like, oh,
right,
that's terrible. But yet they gave a ton of money away for PPP and these emergency disaster loans, which the PPPs were all forgiven. Nobody ever paid them back. And most of those were, I'll say, six-digit, 100,000 plus loans.
Yeah.
And nobody paid a nickel. As long as you did the right processing, and the banks pretty much helped take care of that as it went forward. So those are done. Hopefully we never see that ever again. But now these emergency disaster loans are sitting out there, and the payments are starting. So you were able to defer it for a while, but the problem with it is in a big picture deferral, you could defer it up to 12 months, and it usually was a year deferral to start with. Then you could defer it twice to a maximum of 30 months. And it was supposed to give taxpayers time to recover from the pandemic, get the wheels back in motion, your business, and then go from there. But Congress didn't allow any other adjustments to this, and so basically that could be an issue going forward. There really isn't. You could do a hardship rule, basically, and a hardship, they'll let you drop your payments down. I think it's 10% of the amount due, or a minimum of $25 for 6 months.
Right.
And then, you can basically keep requesting 6-month extensions on that if you really have a true hardship. But
so if you're a small business and you took one of these out, are they still available?
No, these are done. You can't get access to any of them.
I was going to say 3.75 over 30 years. That's great.
But back then, you're talking rates of 2.5, and you're like, 3.75. Most people were attracted to these EDIL because they were supposed to give $10,000 cash up front. And most people were like, hey, I'll take my $10,000. But that never developed. They became true notes or loans with the SBA.
And what is the terms on a normal loan for a small business?
Well, it depends. I mean, if you're going to a bank and getting financing, it could be a 5-year note. If it's operations, it could be a 30-year note. If it's a building, equipment, just depends.
Yeah, I'm reading. There's a story in the Wall Street Journal about it. Cookie company out in L.A. I mean, she says it's a difference from everything else out there. Everything else is high interest and a 2-year payback, and this is 3.75
for 30
years. I mean, that's like a mortgage.
Yeah, it's and basically that was the concept is when people saw the interest rate and they'd say, hey, it's current rates then might have been 2.5, but this is 3.75, but it's 30 years, so I'll take the money and run because they didn't know what was on the other side in a sense.
And this was all because of the pandemic.
Yes.
This was during that whole point.
This was to make sure that companies, small businesses,
keep the lights on, keep the doors open.
Yeah, mid-sized businesses stayed in business and gave them the funding going forward. Because typically prior to COVID, if you were going to get an SBA loan, you had to present SBA with a business plan. And your business plan might take you 6 months to really create a real business plan that the SBA or what's called SCORE, and SCORE is it's a nonprofit volunteer organization that will help you build, kind of set the stage to get you to the SBA side. And that was always, I'll say, elusive. The SBA, you had to have a business plan. Well, COVID kind of brought them right to your front door if you're a business owner, because most people already have a relationship now with SBA, whether they realize it or not, whether it was PPP loans or the EDIL loans.
Yeah. And then you have to pay them back. This isn't the PPP was the
PPP was
Paycheck Protection Program.
Typically forgiven. I mean,
that was
forgiven.
Very
few weren't, but a handful weren't just because of circumstances. But the bulk of them were all forgiven. These are not forgiven.
Yeah.
They're not forgivable. They weren't designed for that. They were a true note back to the federal government.
All right. So if you've got one of these out there, they are coming due. You can get there are some wiggle room in there. You can do a hardship. You can do a deferral,
if you had to, but
deferment.
And again, you can prepay them too. So there's no prepayment penalties in there. So if you have the capital, again, kind of goes down that path. We talked about it last week. With interest rate spikes, this might be your 3.75. You might be at 5 or 6% if you did financing today, or higher. It might be, to your advantage to keep this and just make monthly payments as we go forward to see what really develops on the other side of this.
Yep. So if you're a small business and you have one of these, they can always reach out to you.
Oh, yeah.
To find out how they can work and how repayment goes on that. But it's just something that's out there right now, hanging out there in the news. These are going to have to be paid back.
Yes.
They're not going to be forgiven.
I think everybody put them on extensions, and they pushed them as far as they possibly
Let's
could.
see what's going to happen.
And see what's going to go down. And some people sat on the cash. They didn't really need it. They can turn around and pay the loans right back, no questions asked. Other people, the funny part was, in some of these EDILs, they were used to pay taxes, back taxes, because there wasn't the provision in there that said you can't do that.
Right.
So it's kind of crazy. Where a PPP loan was actually true paycheck. It was for basically payroll. It was to pay rents, utilities, so on and so forth. Whereas this was just a wide open loan out there.
And the idea is that now that it's coming due, put it in your budget.
Yeah, you have to. You really have to, because I don't think that I've heard a lot of questions from clients who have them, and they're like, oh, they're going to be forgiven, aren't they? And it's no.
Yeah.
It's a real loan with the SBA, 30 years. You have to pay them back.
So if I'm a small business, and you specialize in helping out small businesses, you'll do their taxes, you come up with a plan
the
for
strategy
them.
And the plan, yeah.
Is that something that I can come to you and say, hey, Jeff, we've been open for a year now. We've realized we don't really know what we're doing. I bring up the example a lot. You love flowers. You quit your job. You opened up a flower shop. You've got great bouquets. Everybody's happy. You get great Yelp reviews. But you're realizing, maybe I'm not making a profit, or maybe I'm not making as big a profit as I could.
Yes.
I can come to you and
we can help sort it out.
What are the steps that you go through?
Well, the steps would be basically we would look if you have QuickBooks or any other type of software. Some companies don't have enough, I don't want to say transactions. It's not revenue. It's more transactions that they really don't need to be plugged into QuickBooks. But I would strongly suggest QuickBooks. It's kind of the common, software across the country. And there's ways that you can make sure that the bank accounts are linking, that the credit cards are linking to QuickBooks, and you can create profit loss statements and analyze the profit loss statements. I hear a ton of people say, oh, I'm not profitable because I don't have any money in the bank. That's not necessarily true. You could be extremely profitable but have no money in the bank. Or the reverse is have a bunch of money in the bank but not be profitable.
Right.
It depends upon the expenses that you have, different stuff like most people. We're starting to see a lot of this, and some of them we're kind of telling them no. They're pushing the limits on what's called Section 179, which is if you buy a high-end SUV, gross vehicle weight greater than 6,000 pounds. You get to take you can take a full deduction the year that you purchase that vehicle. But it's got to be used 100% business use. You can't do that and then not drive the vehicle for business use. So we see stuff like that where people are like, hey, I want to take all my cars and put it in my company just because I have a company and I can do that. And yeah, you can. But if you ever get audited, you're in trouble.
Yeah. And that's what we try to do here on
Exactly.
Keep What's Yours with Jeff Zufall, who wrote the book, Keep What's Yours. We do the show, Keep What's Yours. Try to remind everybody that there are things that you can do within the tax code.
Exactly. Just because your friend said, hey, I write off all my vehicles, it's different if you're a contractor and you need, the F-350s. Yes, you're going to use that to drag your stuff around and, drag materials and equipment and so on. That's 100%. But the average person, high-end Yukon or, Escalade or something of that effect, you'd have to prove, hey, how does that really is it a business necessity?
Right. How does this benefit your business
if you're
rather than getting
exactly
the Toyota Corolla?
Yeah, exactly. A real estate agent, you have to show some what do you want to call it? Pride, if you want to call it that. You don't want to go jump in a little, beater and go, hey, let's go look at houses.
Yeah.
But if you did jump into a
in my Prius.
Yeah, or a Escalade, that's kind of more down that path. So.
Does that work? Would that work?
Yeah, I think that's acceptable.
I've got to make appearances.
You got to make an
keep
appearance.
Up appearances.
Yeah, appearances, and you don't.
Plus, I got to put all those for sale signs in the
That's
back.
right. And toss them out as you go. No.
Yeah.
So, something of that effect. But if you're, you just show up at a manufacturing job and you take that vehicle and put it in the company, technically, it doesn't have a true business use or business purpose. So that's where we see people go, ooh, I'm just going to put all my cars in there. My wife's going to drive one, but she never even shows up at the business. That's an issue.
What happens if I take a magnet and it's got the company name and I slap it on the side of my car?
Mm-hmm.
Does that count as a billboard?
It technically could be advertising, but you could maybe take just the expense of making that magnet, take that as a deduction. most people like to slap it on there and go, ooh, that's a business vehicle.
Right. So, I mean, the point being, if you're a small business, there are things inside the tax code that you could be doing. Just don't work outside of the tax code.
Exactly.
Because, the risk isn't worth
It's not because again,
the non-reward.
Yes. If the IRS really hires the people that they're hiring or they say they're going to hire at a future point, and I think right now what they're saying is the IRS is going to have more people taking phone calls this upcoming tax season.
The IRS has hired 4,000 people.
4,000 out of 80. So they got a little ways to go. We don't know exactly what service centers they're in or
they plan to hire 80,000 people.
Yes.
They've got 4,000.
4,000. So it's
everybody knows that hiring is tough right now.
Yes.
But they've got 4,000 people, so maybe they'll start answering the phones and maybe they'll start
I hope they do.
Filing those papers that, they can't even – we talked about this before. The IRS office in Austin, Texas. They've got Austin, Kansas City, and Ogden, Utah.
Yes.
For some reason. But the one in Austin, the Washington Post went in there. Can't even eat lunch in the commissary because there's paperwork all over the tables, stacked all over the tables. So they're going to start going through all that stuff. And when we're done, they're going to start going through your stuff and my stuff and all of our stuff because what they're trying to do is catch people.
Well, that's the concept is the Don. We talked about that last week or 2 weeks ago. The IRS says there's, $400 or $500 million a year that they're missing out on. People are being tax cheats, so on and so forth. That's, hey, I got a business. I'm going to write off my vehicle and my wife's vehicle. But when the wife's vehicle really isn't business use, yes, that's what they're looking for. And so they're going to dig deep once they have all these people put on staff. But they got to get caught up first. And a lot of people do not realize they're like, hey, we mailed that, a month ago. Why didn't I get a response? It's sitting on somebody's desk somewhere. And it could be 3-4 more months before they respond.
Yeah.
So the concept is again, don't mail anything. There's some stuff that you're forced to mail. You just don't have any choice. But other stuff that can be done electronically, so nobody has to touch it, we're safe, and it'll probably pop in and pop right back out.
Yep. So do your taxes the legal way. Stay within the boundaries of the tax code.
Yes.
And we always mention there's stuff in there for us. It's not just written for the rich and the fabulously wealthy.
Yeah. I mean, they have a whole section to themselves, and
Sure.
it's a little bit more glamorous, but
Donald Trump isn't paying taxes because he's utilizing the tax code.
Exactly.
If you've got a problem with that, then talk to Congress.
Exactly.
Because they're the ones who wrote the tax code. GE's not paying taxes because they're utilizing the tax code the way that it was written.
Exactly.
They've changed things.
They've attempted to. I don't know how it'll end here shortly, but the inflation.
What do they say? 15%?
Yeah, minimum tax, and that's part of the Inflation Reduction Act. But again, we haven't seen the true end results of this, and the corporations may figure that loophole out.
Yep. So GE might be able to do as many loopholes as they can, but the idea is that at the end of the year, minimum 15% is what they're going to have to pay. They
and I
can't
think it was
wiggle their way out of that.
They had to have, what was it? I think $5 billion, something like that, 5 or 15 million of revenue, 15 million, 5 billion, something like that.
Yeah.
Before that really kicked in. So, maybe they figure out how to break into 2 separate entities and stay under that threshold. There's all kinds of weird advantages that they could.
There's a building full of tax attorneys right now working
that are
on
figuring out, hey, we need to figure this out quick.
They're calling AOC right now. They're saying, can you show us what the final bill is? Because we need to start working our way around it.
As fast as possible.
But the idea is that they've made the tax code out to be beneficial for the big guys and sometimes the little guys too.
Yeah, there's advantages out there. Small businesses, and I say small businesses. That's, a single person, selling the widget out of the garage. That's a small business. You could have 10 employees. That's still a small business.
Yep. So there's stuff in there. So work within the tax code. And if you want to figure out how to do that, give Jeff a call, 636-394-5524, CapitalAdvisoryGrp.com. If you haven't consulted with someone, if you haven't done anything, you're just kind of paying your taxes or just feeling like you're working your way through it from what you read online or what the the website prompts tell you to do when you try to fill out your taxes. There's something more that can be done.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Usually there's something that can be done. So talk to a tax professional. Make it be Jeff Zufall, 636-394-5524. And just know that if you have one of these loans that are out there, they are not forgivable.
No.
They are something that you have to do. And if you're a small business and you haven't heard about the ERCT, Employee Retention Credit,
yes,
right? ERCT, MyERCToday.com
yes,
is a website that you can go to. These are the things that if you kept your doors open during the pandemic, if you kept people on payroll, employee retention, if you retained employees,
you get a credit back from the federal government for keeping people on payroll.
The government wants to give you a kickback, and we've heard the commercials.
Oh yeah, you've seen them whether you realize it or not. There's commercials everywhere. It is not cheap, and I say not cheap. I believe that the fee to do the paperwork to get from point A to point B ranges anywhere from 12% to as high as 18% is what they get. So if they capture or recapture $100,000 in a credit for you, and you're at a 15% fee, you're going to pay them basically $15,000.
Yeah.
It's not cheap, but the theory would be is, hey, I'm going to get $100,000 back, but I got to give these guys $15,000 or $18,000 to do the paperwork for me. It's worth its weight.
Yeah.
Now, the other side of the equation is the year in which you receive that income, it's taxable income to you. So that's what a lot of them are not explaining on the backside of this is when you get this credit paid to you, you're going to pay tax on the actual dollars given.
So when I get that credit, so I'm a small business, I kept my doors open, I paid my employees, the government wants to reward me for that. The idea being that it was a tough time for everybody, and the fact that you were still operating and keeping people off unemployment, we're able to still keep the machine running.
Now you're going to have to go back and amend the returns the year in which you received that credit in a sense. It's not a big deal,
right?
But you still got free money in your pocket.
Do I get to tell the government, say, hey, you gave me $100,000, but I had to pay this person $15,000?
Sure. You get a deduction for what your fee was to acquire it,
sure,
or to prepare it for you. So, but you have to go back and amend that year and decrease that payment. So.
And if I'm a small business owner and I kept my doors open, I can come to you and say, Jeff, how do I get the ball rolling?
We'll guide you to the people that you need to talk to that know exactly how to do that. So.
Perfect. 636-394-5524. Were you a small business? Did you stay open during the pandemic? Did you get your PPP, which hopefully was forgiven?
Yes.
Did you get one of these other loans that it's a low rate?
Yeah.
30-year. You got to start paying that back. Put it in your budget and see if you can get any money back from the government for the employee retention credit.
Yes.
So give Jeff a call, 636-394-5524. Every small business owner out there should call Jeff today and leave a message because he's a little busy right now.
Nobody's there.
Nobody's there. But leave a message with your name and phone number. We'll call you back and get on it. Keep what's yours with Jeff Zufall. There's so much out there to do when it comes to our taxes. There's so many ways to kind of wiggle around, and the big guys do it and the little guys can too.
As long as you stay within the guardrails.
Within the guardrails of the tax code, you are safe, and they are hiring more people to start looking into this stuff.
Look to see if you jumped over or not.
So maybe if you've been kind of going loosey-goosey the past couple of years, maybe now's the time to...
I would strongly suggest that you make sure that you keep your documents, receipts. Again, the concept is accurate paperwork, document. Maybe not 2022, but most definitely starting in 23 and beyond. Because remember, IRS comes in, say it's 2025, 2026. They're going to look backwards at this stuff. And they're going to go 3 years back and say, hey, we want to look at your returns. Starting in 23, that's when they would be looking at it.
Yep.
So
So now
just keep that in mind.
Now is the time, and we're getting towards the end of the year. Couldn't be closer, actually.
It's pretty much there.
Pretty much there. So now's the time to kind of look into it and say, you know what, I need a Jeff Zufall on my side as well. Jeff Zufall, Senior Tax Strategist and Wealth Advisor with Capital Advisory Group. Website is CapitalAdvisoryGrp.com, and you can call them, 636-394-5524. We'll be back right after this. It's more of Keep What's Yours with Jeff Zufall.
Keep What's Yours continues with Josh Gilbert and Jeff Zufall.
Back on the Big 550 KTRS, it's Keep What's Yours with Jeff Zufall, the tax show here on the Big 550 KTRS, talking taxes. And everybody, it's everybody's favorite topic.
Yes,
Jeff.
It is.
You know, I gotta tell you, if I met you out at a bar and I said, "What do you do?" and you tell me, "Well, I do taxes," and I'd say, "You know what?"
You'd start walking the other way.
Yeah, you know, bean counter and all this stuff. But hang on, everybody.
Pencil pusher.
Yeah, pencil pusher. Do you pay tax, Jeff? Do you pay taxes?
Yes.
Do I pay taxes?
Yes.
Does everyone listening to the sound of my voice
Pretty
right now?
much everybody does.
Everybody pays
Yes.
taxes.
Whether they realize it or not, they do.
So you need to have some sort of strategy
Yes.
around it. Otherwise, you're going to be paying more than what you
More
have
and
to.
more, yeah.
You know, I mentioned it last time. A very famous person once said, "I'm not paying more taxes than what I legally have to."
Yes.
And you know what? He wasn't wrong.
No, he was right on.
If you got a problem with that, you know, take it up with Ann
Congress.
Wagner and,
Yep, that's
and
right.
Corey Bush and everybody there in Washington,
Ways
D.C.
and Means, there's having a powwows as we speak.
Yes, they're the ones that write the tax code.
Yeah.
So we might as well take advantage of it. What's inside of it?
Yes.
Well, what's inside of it? I don't know. But Jeff does.
Yeah.
That's the point. So if you meet Jeff at a bar, there should actually be a line, you know, going out the door to say, "Oh, I want to sit next to the tax guy," and just kind of order him a tequila.
There you go.
And just kind of pick his brain and see what I could be doing more. Or you can just call him and go visit him during the week.
That's right.
You know, and you can bring him a tequila to the office.
That works too.
636-394-5524. If you hate taxes, Jeff should be the first phone
That's
call
right.
you make. So we talked a lot of news here as well. Interest rates hike again.
Yes, this is the 7th hike for the year. The final hike for the year, another 0.5 point. So, again, the bulk of the rate hikes were 0.75%. The Fed kind of toned it down just a tiny bit because the interest rate hikes actually go back to inflation. And so you can see inflation, I say, taming it just a tiny, tiny bit. It's 7.1 is what they're saying. And, again, that's from November of 2021 to November of 2022. It's still 7.1. Target is 2 to 2.5 is what the Fed wants on a regular basis. So if you listen to what Jerome Powell said, a lot of people would probably fall asleep listening to him, but he talked that they're still aggressive. They're data dependent, and they're going to see probably February of 2023 will be the next time that they raise rates. And Janet Yellen says that they don't see or perceive that they will have inflation under control. Best case would be the end of 2023. So it basically what they're saying is straight out. We're going to keep raising rates going into 2023. And again, mortgage rates are tied to this, but they're not. Mortgage rates are more to the bond yields. Which mortgage rates have come down over the last 2 weeks, just a touch. Mortgage rates hit the high of probably 7.25. They actually have started to taper back down a little bit. But your credit card rates, your mortgage rates, in a line of home equities, car rates, we're starting to see the good side of this is you're starting to see CD rates, money market rates actually rise, whereas before it was dormant money. You couldn't get interest rates were zero going into the end of last year. Today, you've got money markets at the 3% range, 2.7, somewhere in that. If you go to a bank, you'll see, as in U.S. Bank the other day, they have a 12-month or 18-month CD for like 3.2 or something of that effect. The banks are slow to raise their CD rates because that's how they make money. But again, typically right now you could get a 6-month CD at 4.5. So we're starting to see where a year ago that didn't even exist. That's the good side of it is rates are getting high enough you can actually make money on your cash, no risk. That's the beauty.
So if there is something out there for me, I come to you, Jeff, and I say, hey, the interest rates are going up, and I was listening to the show the other day. You were talking CDs. You were talking bonds. I've got, $20,000 that's been sitting in the bank. I don't need it.
We're going to buy some crypto. No.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about that in a second. But I want to do something with it. Mm-hmm. You can tell us where to put it.
Exactly. And walk you through it, kind of what you would expect.
And what was good last year might not be good this year.
Exactly.
What was bad last year might actually
be good this year.
Pretty good this year. And it's all because of inflation.
Yes, inflation, market cycles. Biggest thing is your risk your personal. Every person has their own risk tolerance, which means what degree of risk would you assume for a rate of return, and that's the question of the day. Yeah. And if anybody looks at their brokerage statements year to date, it's terrible. I get it, but that's part of that market cycle. It needs to reset. We saw a pop up in the month of November. I mean, markets are up almost 10, 11% on average, which is good. The question is, will we have a Santa Claus rally, which should be taking place as we speak? And it kind of fizzled out. It's really not kicking in just yet. But it's still, we got a week and a half to go.
Sure. So it's one of these things where I look at, you've told us before, I look at what I have in the bank. I look at what I have in my savings. And my wife is a little bit more conservative than I am.
Yes.
We're both still fairly young, so we've got time to figure it out. But if she's able to lay her head down on the pillow at night and know that she's got $10,000 liquid,
it's there, that it's not going anywhere.
That's not going anywhere. That's in our savings. I can go to the bank tomorrow and take it all out.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's what she's good with, then whatever's left over
can be actually you can assume a degree of risk. And each person, again, like I said, will have a different risk tolerance. Some people are like, hey, put it out there on red and we're good to go.
Right.
Other people are like, no, I don't ever want to see it go down. And if it does go down, no more than X. So that just depends upon, and everybody's somewhere in that range. So.
And with the inflation being what it is, there's some bonds out there that didn't used to be good at all, and now they're kind of
they're better.
Yeah.
So again, the Fed's kind of got you. October 30th, I think. They reset the deck, so now the inflation-protected bonds actually have a base income to them, and then the top side. So they're running, I think the newest issue out there is running like 6.2, 6.4, somewhere in that range, whereas 4 months ago we were at 9.6.
Mm-hmm.
There were some bonds out there as high as 11% in the inflation, protected side. But still, it's still a decent rate of return. It's a 30-year bond. Don't panic on it. You could cash out any point in time. Just got to hold it a year to get your interest.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's interesting. And there are things to do, and the idea being, some of us out there, and, I am part of this as well, is we're, not necessarily living paycheck to paycheck, but the inflation.
No, inflation's
the
catching
true
up.
inflation is catching up to us. I'm going to the grocery store and I'm realizing, man, my savings is going
starting
down.
to dwindle because the way that you have your budget laid out, it's not taking into account for the increase in inflation. And again, remember, the inflation number at that 7.1 is the X food and oil, is the way that the feds manipulate this thing. And the concept is it smooths that. It's not as aggressive or as crazy as if they added it back in. But, I mean, everybody's been to the grocery store, you see what the numbers are, and it's crazy.
Yeah, and if you talk inflation rate, 7.1% or whatever it is right now, it goes up and down. 7.1, that's better than the 8 that we've
Oh, it's
been
way
listening
better
to.
than 8.6 that we were running with a couple months ago.
But if you go to the grocery store, you see that the true inflation rate of things that you're actually buying is more like 18%.
Yeah, that's kind of the average. Seriously.
So, and then the gas, let's not even get into that because
Yeah, and that's it's up, it's down. It is down currently, which is good.
which is good. I'll buy
really
a whole
good.
bunch and store it in my garage.
Yeah. But the question is how long will it stay down? And it'll go through different market cycles too.
Right. But
So-
if you've got money just sitting out there, not making any money,
Your cash can make money now.
your cash can make money.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's just sitting in the bank account for a rainy day.
Yeah.
And, to be honest with you, if your wife or your husband agrees that, I could be happy knowing that if I had 10 grand in the bank when the AC
Exactly.
air conditioner went out or the HVAC unit
Yeah.
starts shooting craps, we can pay for it in cash and still be okay.
And be able to do it. Yeah.
Well, whatever's left over, put that into something that can be making you some money.
Just a little bit. And there's a degree of risk that you could take as you go forward. So
Absolutely. So if you want to know more about stuff like that, Jeff Zufall is a senior tax strategist. He helps me with my taxes. He, puts me on the long plan, 5-year, 10-year. And, you can even touch on taxes and retirement as well.
Yeah.
That's a big
at least
one.
start to project out, see where you're going to fall.
It's one of these things where it's like, hey, I'll do tax-deferred IRA right now, and I'll worry about taxes later.
Exactly.
Well, at some point, you're going to have to
You
worry.
have to worry about it.
Yeah. Hey, Josh, you're going to start worrying about those taxes? Nah.
Yeah,
I'll worry about
wait
it later.
a couple more years.
Yeah, I'll
and then
wait.
you get there and you can't do anything about it, and you're stuck with what the results are.
So if you've made the deal to worry
Yes.
about taxes later, just keep in mind that later's coming.
Later's coming.
It's coming. You have to deal with the taxes. You made a deal to worry about them later. Jeff can help you worry about them when the time comes. He's also a wealth advisor as well over at Capital Advisory Group. So if you've got a bucket of money that's not making any money,
Let's
talk
talk.
to Jeff. Let's talk. Let's figure out where can I put it. Let's give me 4%. Let's give me 6%.
Exactly.
See what is out there for you. 636-394-5524, CapitalAdvisoryGrp.com. It's Keep What's Yours. When we come back, we'll talk crypto because there's some movement there on the Big 550 KTRS.
Keep What's Yours continues with Josh Gilbert and Jeff Zufall.
Back on the Big 550 KTRS, back to Keep What's Yours with Jeff Zufall. I'm Josh Gilbert, sitting here with Jeff Zufall, senior tax strategist and wealth advisor with Capital Advisory Group. Do you have somebody doing your taxes? Do you have somebody advising you on what you should do with that money that's just sitting in your bank account, that's just collecting dust? What does money collect in the bank account?
In a savings account, probably 0.5% a year.
0.5%.
Money markets are at 2.7, depending upon where you're at, 2.7, 3% on average. CD rates anywhere, depending upon the length, anywhere between 2.5 to 4.75, as we said today.
But there's other things out there that maybe we could be doing to make more money on our money. And the idea is, maybe you don't need that money right now.
Exactly.
So you're just kind of leaving it in the bank account. But I'll always take an extra 6%
Exactly.
for just having money in a different account.
Just again, the bucket concept, the more buckets of money that you have sitting out there going, and I say with different risk tolerances for each one of them, will produce a different rate of return for each bucket of money, and that's personal preference. So a lot of people we see, they pile money up in their 401ks. They end up hitting retirement, and they got a huge tax bill.
Yeah.
Because all that money coming out is all taxable income to you. So again, the concept is maybe 10 years, 5 years before retirement, you actually really start to analyze where do you sit. Making sure you have enough income to produce enough money to produce the income that you need in retirement. But what is the actual net tax? What's it going to cost you? So if you go, I get $50,000 a year in retirement, is it really 50, or is it 40 because you got to give 10 in taxes?
Right.
And that's the question.
Anybody out there with a tax-deferred IRA is looking at their
The IRS is your partner.
Yeah, the number in there, that ain't your money.
It's not yours. Yeah,
because the government's going to step in and take part of that. What percentage of it? Well, that's up to you.
Well, it depends. It depends upon if your wife works, or if you're single or whatever the case may be. So that's what you're looking for.
And if you don't do any tax preparation, you don't do any tax mitigation strategies, you don't implement something a couple of years before you retire, then you're going to pay what the government says you should pay.
Whatever it is.
Whatever they want.
And the IRS has it, I'll say, rigged, if you want to call it that. They know you go into retirement, you start Social Security, you start your pension, you start to take some money out. And then lo and behold, this thing called required minimum distribution shows up. And then that's more money out of your IRA. And poof, guess what? In retirement, you're in a higher tax bracket than you are when you were working.
Yes.
And there's no way out.
And there's no way around that. Yeah. So the idea was, I'll pay a lower tax rate. And then all of a sudden you're paying a higher tax rate?
Higher tax rate, yeah.
That wasn't proper planning.
Exactly. And if you look at the big picture today, where we sit, and again, there was a lot of money given out by both administrations through COVID, which rightfully so should have. Most of it was late to the game anyway, but the problem will be is at some point in time we need to pay that back.
Yeah.
And I say we as a nation need to pay it back. And the only way it's going to happen is through tax increases.
Taxes are probably going up.
And taxes are going up down the path. So be prepared.
So if you think that the tax rate, I'll pay my taxes later. Well, the tax rate might be higher than it is now.
Higher. Yeah.
It might be higher. You don't know. So talk to Jeff and say, hey, I'm kind of a little, maybe I'll do 50% here and 50% there. What should I do? Jeff can help you out with all that.
Exactly.
Should I put my money into crypto, Jeff? Bunch of things going on with this FTX thing collapsing. It looks like your good old-fashioned Ponzi scheme.
It's what it looks like.
You put money into FTX. He took it out and put it wherever he wanted it to go.
He felt like doing it, yeah. So they're saying that Bernie Madoff back in the day, they say that he scammed 40,000 people. They're saying that this could be upwards of 100,000 people getting scammed on this.
Oh, boy.
And again, with the client with good faith put it up. They moved it through the different exchanges and the purses and so on and so forth and used it for their personal gain. So they came and, arrested him or took him in custody the other day. He was supposed to go before Congress and do a little road show, but they kind of swooped him up before that happened.
Yep.
So I was like, maybe that's smart on their part. And again, the funny part is from the politics side of this, I've seen both sides of it. You have people going, he gave all his money to the Democrats. From what we're seeing now as you read deeper into this, he really gave it to both sides.
Yeah.
And he was kind of buying both sides of the aisle. The Democrats were, it's out there. You could read who he gave it to, how many people, et cetera. The Republicans, though, it was funny because he did it through a PAC, which is a PAC. So the PAC is the dark pool.
Dark money. You can't really trace it.
Can't. And what it turns out is somebody asked him, well, why'd you do that? And he said, well, he didn't want the Democrats to get mad at him if he was giving the same amount to the Republicans.
Yeah. And I think he said it's not very popular to give money to Republicans
and it was
right now.
What? But, again, at the end of the day, he's given to both sides
and he did
of
it
the
anyway.
aisle. Get it both sides of the aisle. So people are like, well, wait, he's buying his way out. I don't think so. I think at the end of the day, you got to realize crypto is unregulated in the States. IRS is literally 5 or 7 years behind the game. They're making the rules up as they go. And so the issue with FTX and a couple of these other guys that he's going to end up taking down with him is typically most people look at it as the tax equivalent to say, oh, I made money or I lost money. So if you had FTX and you sold it the beginning of the year before all this started and you made a gain or a loss, it's going to fall on your tax return as capital gain, capital loss, short-term and long-term. The other side of this equation, though, is when we fall into this FTX stuff where it's actually fraud and it goes poof, you can't really write it off because it doesn't. It exists, but it doesn't exist. It has no intrinsic value. So what you have to wait for is the feds to actually rule that it is a worthless security, and that's going to be one of the issues. So it's either a worthless security and you take it as a write-off, capital gain, capital loss, or you take it as like a theft, a casualty loss, and it goes on. It's not a capital gain, capital loss. It goes on a Schedule A as an itemized deduction.
So if I bought a stock and it just tanked, Tesla, for whatever reason, Tesla's going down right now. If I bought a stock and it tanked, I can declare a capital loss.
Yeah,
and
you'd have to sell it. So if you bought it for $1 and it went to 20 cents, you would sell it at 20 cents and you would take a 80-cent capital loss on that stock.
And that would go on my taxes, and that could offset any capital gains.
Exactly. All capital loss offsets capital gain. Any capital loss that you can't use, you get $3,000 against ordinary income. They still haven't raised that for whatever reason. And then say that you still got $30,000 in losses that just carry forward. So again, you could push it to the next year, use it against capital gains or against ordinary income. So until you use it up. But it's only with you in a sense. So Josh, you have a $30,000 capital loss. You would get to use that until the day that you die.
Okay.
So if you pass before the 30,000's used up,
it just goes away.
Goes away.
Yep.
But
you can't pass capital losses down to my
kids. You can't
kids.
pass it on. A lot of people are like, "Oh, I'll just write this off and then I'll give it to the kids," and it's like it doesn't work that way. It's to you and you only.
But if it's a Ponzi scheme,
yes,
and it's not like the stock tanked and I played the market and I lost. If someone bilks me out of my money,
they
stole
your money. Yeah.
How does that work?
So it's actually going to fall back onto a Schedule A, just no different than a casualty loss. So if your house got hit by a tornado and the insurance company only paid $90,000 of the $100,000 repairs, you get to take that $10,000 that's unreimbursed and actually then take that and drop it onto a Schedule A. So again, the funny part though is it's not some of the reductions like $100 for every $1,000 of income. Some of those are set to the side on this because it's actually theft. So the problem though is until they rule as to what it really is, you might be stuck sitting on this FTX unless they actually declare that it's worthless.
Yeah, they don't know if it's worthless yet. Yeah. They don't
know.
They don't know exactly what it is yet.
Dig deeper and figure out what's going on, and then they do say, okay, they're bankrupt. It's a worthless security. Then you can take it as a casualty loss or a theft loss, not a sale loss.
So if I bring my shoebox to you, this March, and I say, hey, I have FTX in there, you're going to say, well,
it might just
we might have to sit on
side.
that for a minute.
Yeah, just to see what takes place. And again, that like I said, they're making the rules up as they go. Originally, it's crypto, and it used to be referred to as cryptocurrency. But the IRS treats it as an asset, so it's a capital gain, capital loss. It's not like the dollar or anything down that path.
Right.
So again, this is new territory. We'll find out. FTX has taken, I think, 2 other cryptos. I can't think of the names of them. Taking them down. There's probably more to go, just depending upon how deep that this goes.
Sure. And as always, we need to remember that estimated payments are coming up.
Yes. Last fourth quarter payment. January 16th. And again, that's the one where you want to do a calculation to see where you're at for the year. If you can do that quick calc and go, I'm going to owe a little bit of tax, you could owe the IRS or the state $1,000 before they hit you for underpayment penalties. So the concept is get it under $1,000, make whatever payment you have to make, and you could do that on January 16th to the federal and or the states.
All right. So if you are one of those employees that has to pay estimated payments every quarter,
yes,
just know that it's coming up.
It's right around the corner, unfortunately.
Don't
it's the last
ignore
one.
It.
Yeah, because if you blow this one off and you end up owing tax more than $1,000, the federal government, state of Missouri, state of Illinois, they're going to slap you with an underpayment penalty. And just because you should have made proper estimated payments all year long, so they hit you with an underpayment penalty. Failure to make another one is failure to make proper estimated payments. And we've seen that more and more in the last year and a half.
The tax upon a tax.
That's all it is.
All right. And if you've got questions about any and all of this, give Jeff a call, 636-394-5524. how do I avoid taxes on top of taxes?
Yes.
Have Jeff look over your stuff. Get him on the payroll, so to speak, and have Jeff be your guide when it comes to taxes. And if you're a small business, Jeff is a small business specialty.
Yes.
And he can take a look at your small business, find out where you're bleeding money, find out where you're making money, and make sure that the one goes up and the other one goes down.
Exactly.
Give Jeff a call today, 636-394-5524. Jeff Zufall, Senior Tax Strategist and Wealth Advisor with Capital Advisory Group. CapitalAdvisoryGrp.com, and just Google Jeff Zufall Taxes. All right, we'll see you next week.
You betcha. We'll see you. Thank you.
Happy holidays.
Same to you.
You've been listening to Keep What's Yours with Josh Gilbert and Jeff Zufall, Senior Tax Strategist and Wealth Manager at Capital Advisory Group. To learn more, call 636-394-5524 or visit CapitalAdvisoryGrp.com.